Good Thursday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for May the 25th. Today we're reading together in Deuteronomy chapter 19 and Deuteronomy chapter 20, combining a couple of chapters here today to help us try to do our best to keep on track so we can make sure that we do finish through Esther by the end of the year. I appreciate so much you taking the time to read along with me today. Let me get the text up on the screen for us, and we'll read along together. Today we're going to have, again, within Deuteronomy, we're seeing some rehashing and some revisiting of some various things that have been previously taught by Moses regarding the law of Moses, regarding his law, and regarding the way that they are to behave themselves once they enter into the promised land. The language that is spoken of here on a number of occasions is when this happens, basically saying when this happens in the future, when you enter into the land, when you're settled, when you're facing these various nations and such, this is what you are to do. So all of this is spoken not just as instruction, but also it's spoken really as a promise that Yahweh is going to get you to this point. And once you get to that point, you need to remain loyal to him so that you can do these things that he is instructing you to do the way he has instructed you to do them. So let's read the text here in Deuteronomy chapter 19 and 20 today. Look at a rehashing of the cities of refuge that is mentioned in Numbers chapter 35. Then we're going to see a couple of other laws from the Ten Commandments are going to be addressed in a little bit of detail. And then we're going to have some rules for war that's going to show up specifically in chapter 20. We'll read that here in just a moment. But again, beginning here in Deuteronomy chapter 19 and verse number 1. Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse number 1, when Yahweh your God annihilates the nations whose land he has given you, so that you drive them out and live in their cities and houses, you are to set apart 3 cities for yourselves within the land Yahweh your God is giving you to possess. You are to determine the distances and divide the land Yahweh your God is granting you as an inheritance into 3 regions, so that anyone who commits manslaughter may flee to these cities. Here is the law concerning a case of someone who kills a person and flees there to save his life, having killed his neighbor accidentally without previously hating him. If, for example, he goes into the forest with his neighbor to cut timber, and his hand swings the axe to chop down a tree, but the blade flies off the handle and strikes his neighbor so that he dies, that person may flee to one of these cities and live. Otherwise, the avenger of blood, in the heat of his anger, might pursue the one who committed manslaughter, overtake him, because the distance is great, and strike him dead. Yet he did not deserve to die, since he did not previously hate his neighbor. This is why I am commanding you to set apart 3 cities for yourselves. If Yahweh your God enlarges your territory, as he swore to your ancestors, and gives you all the land he promised to give them, provided you keep every one of these commands I'm giving you today and follow them, loving Yahweh your God and walking in his ways at all times, you are to add 3 more cities to these. In this way, innocent blood will not be shed, and you will not become guilty of bloodshed in the land Yahweh your God is giving you as an inheritance. But if someone hates his neighbor, lies in ambush for him, attacks him and strikes him fatally, and flees to one of these cities, the elders of his city are to send for him, take him from there, and hand him over to the avenger of blood, to the avenger of blood, and he will die. Do not look on him with pity, but purge from Israel the guilt of shedding innocent blood, and you will prosper. Do not move your neighbor's boundary marker, established at the start in the inheritance you will receive in the land Yahweh your God is giving you to possess. One witness cannot establish any iniquity or sin against a person. Whatever that person has done, a fact must be established by testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If a malicious witness testifies against someone accusing him of a crime, the 2 people in the dispute are to stand in the presence of Yahweh before the priest and judges in authority at that time. The judges are to make a careful investigation, and if the witness turns out to be a liar who has falsely accused his brother, you must do to him as he intended to do to his brother. You must purge the evil from you. Then everyone else will hear and be afraid, and they will never again do anything evil like this among you. Do not show pity. Life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, and foot for foot. Verse number 1 of chapter 20 of Deuteronomy. When you go out to war against your enemies and see horses, chariots, and an army larger than yours, do not be afraid of them. For Yahweh your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, is with you. When you are about to engage in battle, the priest is to come forward and address the army. He is to say to them, listen, Israel, today you are about to engage in battle with your enemies. Do not be cowardly. Do not be afraid, alarmed, or terrified because of them. For Yahweh your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to give you victory. The officers are to address the army. Has any man built a new house and not dedicated it? Let him leave and return home. Otherwise, he may die in battle and another man dedicate it. Has any man planted a vineyard and not begun to enjoy its fruit? Let him leave and return home. Otherwise, he may die in battle and another man enjoy its fruit. Has any man become engaged to a woman and not married her? Let him leave and return home. Otherwise, he may die in battle and another man marry her. The officers will continue to address the army and say, is there any man who is afraid or cowardly? Let him leave and return home so that his brothers won't lose heart as he did. When the officers have finished addressing the army, they will appoint military commanders to lead it. When you approach a city to fight against it, make an offer of peace. If it accepts your offer of peace and opens its gates to you, all the people found in it will become forced laborers for you and serve you. However, if it does not make peace with you, but wages war against you, lay siege to it. When Yahweh your God hands it over to you, strike down all its males with the sword, but you may take the women, dependents, animals, and whatever else is in the city, all its spoil as plunder. You may enjoy the spoil of your enemies that Yahweh your God has given you. This is how you are to treat all the cities that are far away from you, and not among the cities of these nations. However, you must not let any living thing survive among the cities of these people Yahweh your God is giving you as an inheritance. You must completely destroy them, the Hethites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzite, Hivite, and Jebusite, as Yahweh your God has commanded you, so that they won't teach you to do all the detestable acts they do for their gods, and you sin against Yahweh your God. When you lay siege to a city for a long time, fighting against it in order to capture it, do not destroy its trees by putting an axe to them, because you can get food from them. Do not cut them down. Are trees of the field human to come under siege by you? But you may destroy the trees that you know do not produce fruit. You may cut them down to build siege works against the city that is waging war against you until it falls. And that is the reading of Deuteronomy 19 and Deuteronomy chapter 20. Again, Deuteronomy 19 gets to the cities of refuge issue, and some have broken down. I don't think I've mentioned that to this point yet, but some have broken down what's found here in Deuteronomy, and they've actually lined it up with the various of the 10 Commandments and said, well, this section unpacks and emphasizes this particular command and so on and so forth. And there are some places in which it works, some places in which it doesn't work so well. But obviously here in chapter 19, in this first half of the chapter, it is dealing with issues that might surround the command to do not kill or do not murder, depending on your understanding of that particular text. Here, the issue is not exactly in murder, where it's mentioned. Murder would be associated with what we see in verses 11 through 13, where you have an individual who hates his neighbor. He premeditates the attack and then carries out the attack in order to kill that person, to kill a person he hates. That person is not allowed to take advantage of the cities of refuge ordinance that is given by Yahweh here. In fact, it is the responsibility of the elders of that city to extradite him, basically, to be delivered to those who need to avenge his murder, or to avenge the blood of the one whom he has murdered. They are not to look with pity on this person, but they are to allow for justice to be carried out. They are allowed for the guilt of the innocent shedding of blood to be cleansed from them. They are to deliver this over to his rightful punishment. But for somebody that does accidentally kill someone, where there is, as the case law that's given here, they're chopping wood, he goes to swing the axe, the axe head flies off and kills the person that he's with. That truly is accidental, and it specifies here, this is not someone who has previously hated him. This is truly an accident. Very unfortunate, very sad, but it truly is an accident. For this person, they are to allow this person to run to one of the cities of refuge. Again, you are to put these three cities in these regions and put them, at the least best I can tell from reading it, equally accessible from every place within the land. You wouldn't want to put them all in the northern part of the land to where those who are in the southern part of the land might not have the opportunity to get there before the Avenger of Blood catches up with them. You're to strategically put these in places to where they can be accessed equally by all. So when that happens, then when you do that, these people have the ability to get there and to take advantage of this ordinance that is given by Yahweh. Now he says, if you do right, and if you follow the commands and the land grows even more, then you can establish more of these cities. But unfortunately, I believe, as we're going to see as we go throughout the text, they never get more than these number of cities, which tells us that, again, they did not perfectly follow, at least adequately follow to Yahweh's desire, the laws, the ordinances as a whole, to where their land was not expanded to its full capacity. Now, moving on to chapter 14, or to verse 14, there is the issue of boundary markers, and many people associate this with theft, that this would be an attack on someone's livelihood, that what should be their land is stolen by someone else, and that is not okay. You are not to do that, or else, again, you are stealing from another. Also, we have the issue of false witnesses to finish up chapter 19, where you don't just take the word of one person to establish the guilt of someone else. It must come from at least two or three. And if there is someone who is not, it's not that they're mistaken. It's not an accidental misspeaking of the truth, but it's purposeful. This is somebody who is malicious, who is maliciously accusing in order to harm this person in some way. If that happens, then you bring this before the judges and the priests. They're going to do a careful investigation. And if they find out that person is a liar, if he has falsely accused his brother, then you know what? Whatever he was trying to get done to that brother is going to happen to him. It is this idea of, again, eye for eye, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. And really what this does is we might take this as a lot of the people in the world take this one direction, but another way that you can understand this is this limits the amount of vengeance that someone can take off. So say someone cuts off your finger. Well, just because they cut off your finger doesn't mean you get to turn around and cut off their entire arm. So again, we're keeping level of harm for level of harm. We're trying to keep it even. We're not allowing people to overdo the vengeance that they might take for a particular issue. But here again, we have these issues that very well could happen within the land: incidental murders or incidental killing, purposeful murders, theft, false witness. All of these things are real life situations, and the law is helping to govern how they are to approach these situations and how they can resolve these situations in a way that helps everything to be on the up and up. Again, so that they are living as a just and righteous society, even in the midst of mistakes that might take place. And moving into chapter 20, we see where we have rules concerning war here within the text. Rules concerning war. As you go out to war, which they're going to do, they're going to go out to the war, that they're going to engage in the conquest in this holy war, where they're going to take the land that Yahweh has promised to give to them. First, he would promise to give it to their forefathers. Well, now here they are inheriting these promises. When you go out to war and you see these nations that have lots of horses, lots of chariots, armies bigger than yours, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid of them. Do not become cowardly. Do not be alarmed. Do not be terrified. This is the message that's not just given from Moses to people now, but when they actually go out and engage in war, they're to receive this pep talk from the priest. Now the priest starts to go before them and to give this pep talk to remind them not to be cowardly, afraid, alarmed, or terrified, reminding them of this all-important reality for them, that Yahweh is fighting for them. That Yahweh is fighting for them. He is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies. He will give you the victory. How many times will we read, or have we read already, but will we read as we continue on throughout this narrative portion of Israel's history, that they were outnumbered, that they were fighting armies that were larger and greater than theirs, but they won. And sometimes they won in really silly ways, at least in our minds, whether it be blowing of trumpets or banging of pans and stuff of that nature. To us, that seems silly, but it is all given in order to show that God is the one who gives the victory. It's not going to be by your might. It's not going to be by your military prowess. No, it's going to be by God's strength that you are able to have success in these battles. Now, going into the battle, as they're choosing who is going to go into fight, we're going to see that there are some particular people who, though they should be serving, are disallowed from serving. They are those who are allowed to no longer have to go and serve. It's those who have just built a new house, those who have planted a vineyard, those who have been engaged. If that's a situation that you're in, if you have not yet been able to enjoy the blessings that Yahweh would give in these circumstances, then you are able to go and you are excused from serving in the army, and you can go enjoy these things for a time. You might come back later on to fight in the army. This just shows that God cares, that God is sensitive toward these real life human situations. Another group of individuals that do not need to serve, that need to go, and shamefully so, are those who are afraid and cowardly. You don't need that within the army. You don't need those who are scared, because that fear can very, very quickly spread to the rest of the army, and that's certainly not good. Just get those people out. Get that leaven out of the army. Don't let that infect the rest of the soldiers. And then finally, not finally, there's a couple more bits of subject matter. Verse number 10 might seem strange to begin with, but it's clarified for us once we get to verse number 15, where we'll read that first. This is how you are to treat all the cities that are far away from you and not among the cities of these nations. So we need to recognize that first and foremost. Now, what's being described in verses 10 through 14 is for those cities that are not seemingly not within the land of Canaan, that might be outside of that purview. Now, why exactly they'd be fighting against them, I don't really know. That doesn't make too much sense to me. But we do have this instruction here that if you do come up against them, then you need to offer them peace first and foremost. That if they're far away from you, if they're not a part of the Canaanite cities themselves, you can offer them peace. If they accept the peace, then they'll just be forced labor for you, and you can go on from there in that situation. However, if they do not make peace with you, then you can wage war against it. You can lay siege against it. And if you do that, you need to strike down all the fighters, all the males, but the women, the dependents, the animals, anything else, all the spoil, you can take for yourself. Now, we need to juxtapose that to what we see in verses 16 through 18, where whenever you're fighting the Canaanites, some of those that are mentioned here, the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites, whenever you fight them, it's complete destruction. I might be wondering why. Why the difference here? Why complete destruction for those that are in Canaan, and then non-complete destruction for those who are outside? And it seems to me that these different rules stem from the fact that those who are within the land of Canaan have the opportunity to really influence Israel more than anyone else. And God says we're not going to allow that to happen. But number two, we also have to think about what God told Abraham back in Genesis, that the sin of the Amorites is not yet complete. It's not yet full. That's why you're not going to go conquest the land yet. It seems that it's full at this point. And that because their sin is full grown, because it is time for their punishment, that's what they're going to receive. They're going to receive full punishment, completely destroyed, completely wiped off for their sin, and so that their paganism will not influence others. That seems to be what's going on here. Now, if you know your Bible well, then you might remember that the Gibeonites end up taking advantage of this law pretty well in Joshua chapter 9, and we'll reference that once we get to that text here in a couple weeks. Probably two and a half weeks, something of that nature. We'll talk about that. Oh, actually, no, that's not true. We'll just go through like chapter 36, I think Deuteronomy does. Let's see here. We'll get a little guess right here. Yeah, probably about 3 weeks or so. We'll be talking about what we see in Joshua chapter 9 with that. And then finally, now we see some ecological responsibilities that the people have whenever you're going up to siege a city. Don't just chop down every tree to use as siege works. No, if it offers you fruit, then don't chop that down, because you're just hurting yourself, really. you are losing the opportunity to be blessed by God's bounty. So do not cut down the trees that have fruit, but those that do not offer fruit, you can chop them down and use them in what you are doing. So that's what we see here in Deuteronomy 19 and 20. Again, a lot of details, a lot of expounding upon things that have previously been stated, some things that are difficult. I'll tell you that the teaching concerning the warfare, the rules of war, are pretty rough. But really, I mean, be honest, this is about as good as it gets concerning these cities that are not close to you, that you offer them peace first and foremost. If they don't accept that, then you're going to kill those who might fight against you, but you give the innocents and the women and others, you give them the opportunity to live with you. And we're going to see a little bit more about that tomorrow, actually, in chapter 21, whenever you go and fight against someone and you take their women, how you are to treat them, how you need to treat them fairly and do right by them in various ways. So we'll talk about that tomorrow in chapter 21. Hope you can tune in for that. If you have any questions about the text that we've read today in Deuteronomy 19 and 20, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below, and we'll have a discussion about those questions or comments that you might have. Hope you have a great rest of your Thursday, everyone. May God bless you in all that you do, and hope we'll be able to read again together tomorrow from Deuteronomy chapter 21. Take care. God bless.